and thank you for joining us for this session, Community College English Learners in First Year Composition, Research, Practice, and Policy. My name is Betsy Gilland, and I will be facilitating this panel presentation. This presentation is by authors who have contributed chapters to a book that I've co-edited with a colleague, Meryl Siegel of Laney College in California, which is now available through the University of Michigan Press and available at a discount if you visit the Michigan Press booth at TESOL this year. The book is divided into 4 sections: refining pedagogy, teaching toward acceleration, considering programmatic change, and exploring curriculum through research and policy. And in each of these sections, the authors provide an overview of issues that are pressing for community college composition teachers, and also introduce pedagogy and innovative practices that support community college learners in developing their writing. The presenters today will be in this order. Barbara Auris will be talking about the socio-cognitive approach to help students feel empowered in the composition classroom. Carolyn Torres will share examples of digital tools that help English learners, and in particular learners with disabilities, with their writing. Then Miriam Moore will share information about a writing about writing syllabus that supports English learners in the community college writing classroom. And finally, Heather Finn will present findings from her research on acceleration in community college English classrooms. Please let us know if you have any questions. We are all happy to discuss our work and if you have ideas, we would like to hear them.
Hi everybody, my name is Barbara Auris, and I've been teaching English language learners since 1990 when I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Central Africa. And I've been at community colleges for almost 20 years. I've taught a variety of courses. The most challenging for me has been advanced composition. My students find it challenging, and I find it challenging. I'm always looking for new ideas and an approach to help me. And I started a number of years ago using a socio-cognitive approach, and I have found it to be very helpful and empowering. First, let's talk about the challenges. My students come to my class with a number of challenges. They tell me things like, this course that I'm teaching is a lot of pressure for them because an advanced composition course is often a gateway course to the first year composition class, which is often the gateway course to other college level classes. They also tell me that they feel very alone when they're writing. They just don't know what to do. They maybe don't know how to get started. They don't know how to ask for help. And some of them have just been told that they're just not good at writing. Well, the socio-cognitive approach has been a viable way for me to deal with these challenges. But these are not the only challenges. At many community colleges, there are time constraints due to acceleration models, with the goal of getting students out of the English language support classes and into college level as soon as possible. In addition, due to open enrollment, students come from diverse educational backgrounds into the same classroom. Well, I found that the socio-cognitive approach is very flexible. So, what is the socio-cognitive approach? Well, it is not new, as you can see from the citation of 1966. And for me, this has provided not only the flexibility, but the direction on how to teach my class. So I use a model where we observe, and then we imitate or model what we've observed. So I want the student to see our end goal and then show them how to get there step by step. Now this can be done at any level, whether you're dealing with an elementary level class and you're dealing with sentences, or more advanced when you're dealing with paragraphs or essays or compositions. It works all around. So there are 3 things that I do in my classroom. The first one is an analysis of our model writing, whatever that may be. Then we do guided practice and an analysis of errors. Now, the goal is to make these students aware of how academic writing works. Now, I've been on both sides. I use this model or approach as a teacher. I use a socio-cognitive approach when I teach in my classroom, but I've also experienced it as a student. As I was writing my dissertation, we were encouraged to go out and find dissertations in our field and read through them and look at what was good and what was maybe not so good. Throughout the courses, we did guided practice to do parts of the paragraph or parts of the dissertation, and then the feedback, of course, was our error analysis. So I've been on both sides, as a student and as a teacher. So as a teacher, one of the things I do in my classroom is called thinking and linking. In this activity, I want students to see that a paragraph is not just a group of sentences, but a group of related sentences. And that paragraph might be in a larger piece of writing, but a paragraph has to hold together. And they need to think about what questions the reader might have after they read this paragraph. They can't assume that the reader understands. So in this classroom example, I find that homework can be boring. This makes it hard to concentrate. We look at ways that the writer connects the two ideas, what the writer was thinking to put these two ideas together. And we often were able to come up with this as a cause and effect. Because homework is boring, the effect is it's hard to concentrate. Or we could say the writer answers the question, why is it hard to concentrate when you do homework? And the answer is because it is boring. Now we can take that out of the practice and ask students to look at their own piece of writing. So here's an actual piece of writing a student wrote about preparing for a job interview, and I just took out 2 sentences. So she wrote, you must be ready to answer about interviewers' questions, and they're going to ask you some questions, even the questions are crazy. Okay. Let's put aside the vocabulary, the grammar for the moment, and let's figure out what's going on here. And the 2 sentences are very well connected, but the reader, I think, is left with some further questions. In classroom discussions, other students will look at this, will work together and say, hey, what do you mean by a crazy question? And how can you prepare for those crazy questions? Is there any list somewhere? So the student took those ideas, went back and rewrote this section of her writing. And you can see that she's added an example, and she's also included where you can find some help to prepare for them. So the writing still needs to be edited, yes, but you can see that the writer has been thinking about questions that the reader might have and answering them. A second classroom activity I use is called Make It Academic. And in this activity, I ask students to look at a piece of writing, or a sentence or 2, something small, and then I will show them how I can take that and make it more academic, how I can change the vocabulary, the word order, syntax, whatever, and make it sound more academic. And we have these 2 models in front of us. We have a simple model and we have a more academic model. Here's an example. Really easy. It's easy to write a process paragraph if you follow these directions. First of all, you must select a topic. And then I've gone through and I've made it more academic. I've added details, I've changed vocabulary, I've used more complicated grammar and syntax, and students will analyze this, and then in small groups, I will give them a model that is simple and ask them to make it academic, following the same rules and guidelines. When they work together, they're also creating a classroom community, a support structure, the part of the socio-cognitive approach. So students have responded to this, and they've said things like, it helps to learn from each other, and very often they learn better from each other than from the teacher sometimes. The third aspect that I use in my classroom is the error analysis. So every time a student writes a piece of writing, whether it be a couple sentences, paragraphs, whatever, they get a feedback form. And that form is the same, so they can compare and they can see improvement and changes. They can also see repeated mistakes, so they can see that they need what they need to work on. At one point in the semester, when they have a few of these, I might ask them to analyze their feedback forms and find the top 3 errors that they want to work on for the rest of the semester. Now, this not only gives them control, but also responsibility for their own learning. Students have responded positively, saying that it makes them more aware and more in control of their own writing. So, with all these things, with this paragraph analysis, which takes a lot of class time, guided practice, a lot of class time, the error analysis, feedback takes a lot of time. Is it all worth it? Is this successful for me? And I've tried to measure my success in 3 different ways. The first is simply through data. I've looked at success rates of students who finish their ESL sequence of classes and go on to take the first-year composition class, finding that between 75 to 80% of them are successful the first time in that English 101 class. I've also done interviews with students, some of them just in the hallway, but some were interviews for a dissertation and got a lot more information. And then, of course, anecdotal information from the first-year composition instructors, as we used to pass in the hallway, we would get some information. The results is, I personally feel empowered as a teacher. I feel like I have a flexible approach that I can use with different students in the same classroom and different classrooms at different levels. I also feel confident that I'm using my class time wisely, that they're building communities, they're building support structure, and they're building awareness of what good writing is. And finally, I believe that students are learning. I can see progress even in short periods of time. I can see that they are aware and making progress. Students have also told me that they feel empowered, and they feel that they are making positive results. They are taking these skills with them, not only with their English language support classes, but through first-year composition and college classes in all disciplines. Overall, I just invite you to look at the socio-cognitive approach. Figure if there's anything in there that you can use in your classroom to help students feel more empowered. I invite you to send questions, and I look forward to a great conversation. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Carrie Torres, and I'm going to talk about digital tools to support community college English learners with and without disabilities in writing. So I'm going to start by talking about diversity of community college English learners and digital tools to support writing. First, it's important to really start from the foundation that learner variability is the norm, and all of our students are incredibly varied. So we can talk about some common challenges and common characteristics of English learners and students with disabilities, but there is no one profile for a certain type of student or for a certain type of disability. I think Dr. Shore says it best when he said, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. With that in mind, we are going to look at some common challenges and some ways to support those common challenges, but keeping in mind that our students are highly diverse, it's important to think about what will work for your students in your context. Some common challenges that both English learners and students with disabilities face in writing often is understanding the academic expectations. What does good academic writing look like? Also understanding the genre expectations, knowing that there's more than one type of writing and knowing what that looks like and how to do it. Of course, with producing writing, we know there are many challenges, starting with just generating ideas and organizing those ideas, connecting them together, doing it in grammatically correct way with vocabulary, thinking about mechanics, and of course revision can be really challenging. And finally, executive function is something that many of our learners struggle with, and this can be task initiation and completion, so just getting started or finishing once you've started. Time management, understanding if you have a large writing project, thinking about how do you break that down and get it done on time. Many students who start the night before or an hour before it's due just don't realize that they're not going to be able to finish. Also, managing multi-step assignments. They may also struggle with short-term memory. Their processing is so filled up with thinking about grammar and vocabulary and sentence structure in their second language that they just don't have the processing capacity to hold all of these things in their mind that you need to think about when you're writing. Also, for students who have really struggled historically, persistence and self-confidence can be a real challenge. Let's take a quick look at what our structured writing instruction can look like, and then we'll take a look at some digital tools. So explicit genre instruction, explicit writing strategy instruction, analysis of exemplars, modeling of the analysis process. All of these help students to get an understanding of what the expectation is for writing. If students don't know what the goal or the target is, it's very difficult for them to get there. Other aspects are modeling the whole writing process. What does it look like to take information from a source text and pull out ideas to use in your writing? What does it look like to organize those ideas and write an outline? And what does it look like to take notes in an outline and turn them into sentences and paragraphs and then a polished essay? So actually explicitly modeling that for students can be really helpful. Also explicitly chunking the writing process, and then providing opportunities for collaboration. Sometimes student writing is weak because they don't have a lot of ideas about the topic. So giving them opportunities to generate ideas collaboratively, even potentially do some collaborative writing projects to help build their confidence. And we know that our learners' linguistic capability is much greater in a group than what they can do alone. And multimodal support for writing, providing our learners different ways to practice getting their ideas out. So not simply writing essays every time. Can they use different creative options to practice organizing and structuring their ideas before jumping into a full-blown essay? Now you might notice that that top section all really focuses on understanding the expectations and what to do. And the second section focuses on the actual production of writing. So we're going to look at some digital tools to help support students with these two main areas and also with executive function. So some digital tools to support students' understanding. Well, one of the best things you can do is screencast and model. Actually show your students exactly what you want them to do. If you have complicated instructions, screencast and show your students where to click, where to type, what to do, so that the expectation is very clear. This helps us provide explicit genre and strategy instruction and the modeling. So you can annotate a topic, you can do text deconstruction to show students the different elements of the type of writing you're asking them to produce, so the genre elements or the alignment to the topic and the criteria. And you can model creating a reverse outline from an exemplar. And having students do that helps them to see what a good outline should look like and better prepares them to create their own outlines as well. The example that you see here is a screencast of me annotating an exemplar text, talking through it, explaining why the topic was strong, finding the thesis statement, discussing the thesis statement, and then showing how to complete that reverse outline. Then students picked up where I left off and finished annotating and completing the reverse outline, so they had a chance to practice. So this starts setting those clear expectations for academic writing in general and for academic writing in that genre. Some digital tools to support writing production are things like video apps to brainstorm and discuss, like Flipgrid or Zoom, or speech-to-text applications, including the built-in speech-to-text in Google Docs, or just a mobile device to allow students to record their ideas verbally before having to put them in writing. This provides multimodal scaffolding for our students. Collaborative idea generation and feedback can help students get the ideas that they need to be ready to begin writing. Also, if students are strong speakers, like many Generation 1.5 students, they can use that strength in order to support the writing challenge by using speech to text or audio recording before they write. Also, for many students, I think writing is hard. So if they get to say their ideas out loud and then put it into writing, that's a really helpful support. The example you see on the left is Flipgrid, which is an asynchronous discussion application where students discuss their ideas in a video and then they can provide video replies to each other. This also is a great way to build community in online classes. Another digital tool to support writing production are multimodal authoring tools like Google Slides or Book Creator. Also collaborative writing tools like Google Docs or Google Slides. This again provides multimodal scaffolding. It gives students an opportunity to practice organizing and writing outside of the confines of a typical essay structure, which can be really daunting and overwhelming for some students. This allows for collaborative idea generation and feedback. All of these tools, they can do things collaboratively or they can do them independently. The collaborative production allows them to get feedback from their peers prior to getting feedback from their teachers. This can also help structure how they should chunk down the writing assignments. For example, the sample that you see here is a digital postcard. This gives them a lower stakes way to get their ideas in writing, to help support those ideas with images, and then to get peer feedback using the comment feature of Google Slides. Google Slides is a great way to help students organize outside of the structure of a traditional outline. If they put down their ideas on different slides, each slide can be a section then of the paper they're going to write. Another challenge with writing is grammar, vocabulary, and mechanics. So screencasting, again, to provide explicit instruction on grammar, on vocabulary, and on mechanics can be incredibly helpful. And this can be done through tools like Screencastify or Loom. Teachers can also provide an example with grammar errors or vocabulary or mechanics errors and have students work on the collaborative document to revise based on the explicit instruction. Grammar apps and sites for self-check and targeted instruction can also be incredibly helpful, like Grammarly or Quill. So this supports students' language development and revision support, can help provide explicit instruction for the type of grammar forms or vocabulary that will be required of the genre or the assignment. Also, self-check and self-study tools help college students prepare for independence, because in other classes that require writing, they're likely not going to get feedback. This helps provide them with a resource that they can use in their other classes. If you're going to recommend any applications or sites for students to use as self-study or for self-checks, again, screencast instructions and model how to use those apps. Finally, there are digital tools to support executive function. Checklists and check-ins using something like Google Forms can be very helpful, as well as self-assessments and feedback using Google Forms or Google Sheets. This can help make the chunking of assignments explicit and can help provide targeted feedback. So if you chunk multi-step assignments and give students a checklist for each of those steps, it helps them see the different parts that they need to complete. You can also provide progress timelines and checklists so that students can check and see how they're doing with their time management. And then providing regular, specific, and timely feedback on their work also can support executive function. In addition, providing accessible communication is really important. The examples that I have over here are two different checklists that I use with my students. One is a checklist for multi-step assignments where they can check off their progress as they go along before they submit the assignment. If they're missing something, they'll see that on the checklist before they submit and hopefully go back and work on that piece or tell me that they have a question. The other one that I use asks the students how they're feeling, how much of the work they've done that week, how much of the work they understood, and asks them if they have any questions. This can actually be really important for some of our students because they may be more likely to answer if there's a form to fill out that says, "Do you have any questions?" than actually take the initiative to email the teacher. Those are just a few digital tools. Some final thoughts are be explicit. Explicitly teach what you expect, even if you think students should know it, and then model the key skills, the processes, and applications. Practice with exemplars to reinforce understanding so students see what good writing looks like. Include collaboration and peer support, and then provide multimodal supports to help tap into our students' strengths, and then providing specific formative feedback. Finally, I recommend you continue using digital tools to support your face-to-face instruction. Think about why these tools are effective, what they're supporting, and then continue to provide that additional support. And remember the variability of our students. They may still need differentiation. If you want to read more about some of these ideas, these first two resources are a breakdown of how to provide this structured writing support, and the third provide digital tools to support English learners and students with disabilities. Thank you.
My name is Miriam Moore. I teach English at the University of North Georgia at the Gainesville campus. My presentation is titled Using Writing About Writing Pedagogy at the Two-Year College. In this presentation, I will introduce what Writing About Writing is. I'll present a rationale and 3 basic components for implementing a Writing About Writing syllabus in first-year composition courses at the Two-Year College, whether these courses are sheltered for multilingual writers or if they are blended, containing both multilingual and monolingual speakers. What is then Writing About Writing? Writing About Writing is a pedagogy introduced by Douglas Downs and Elizabeth Wardle in a 2007 article. They envisioned this course as Introduction to Writing Studies, with readings and assignments that target composition and rhetoric and applied linguistics in my case. The authors say that we have not yet imagined moving first-year composition from teaching how to write in college to teaching about writing. In other words, acting as if writing studies is a discipline with content knowledge to which students should be introduced, thereby changing their understandings about writing and thus changing the ways that they write. In short, what students read about and write about in a Writing About Writing course is writing. Why should we consider such a pedagogy, particularly in the two-year college and with multilingual writers? Mark Blauhara has said, many books are written for developmental audiences that feature readings that tend to be simplistic. He says that he has found developmental writers are eager to discuss big ideas. And he goes on to say that developmental writers can improve their skills, but they need a rich intellectual environment in which to do so. I believe the rationale he has given here is particularly important for multilingual writers in the two-year college setting. Where I have taught multilingual writers, both in community colleges in Virginia and now at the University of North Georgia, where we have both 2-year and 4-year degree programs, I have seen a number of different types of students who would like to engage in discussions of big ideas. These include adult immigrants who have recently arrived in the United States, many of whom already have advanced degrees and long to discuss at a level with which they are familiar. At the same time, I have also had classes with students who have recently graduated from high school here in the United States. And unfortunately, some of them have experienced the kind of ESOL instruction that perhaps did not prepare them for college-level study. As one of my students said at one point, she had been in ESL classes where she had experienced worksheet after worksheet. Having an environment where they can discuss big ideas, important ideas, is one that appeals to many of our students. I would further suggest that, as Barbara Bird has said, that students can learn more about reading, thinking, and writing by studying, discussing, and writing about those processes than by simply practicing them. I'm not going to suggest that writing about writing pedagogy is the only successful pedagogy that one can use in a first-year composition course. I'm simply arguing that it is a method one can consider and that can be successful. This is particularly true in the current environment where we have many of our first-year composition courses coupled with a co-requisite support course. We had 2 credits of such support courses when I was teaching in Virginia at the community college system. Here in Georgia at the University of North Georgia, we have a single credit. But that simple single extra credit provides me much additional time to support my students in their reading development, which is critical in a writing about writing approach. Another rationale for considering the writing about writing approach is that it allows us to level the playing field. So many of the students that I have in my classes come from varied backgrounds, and despite my best efforts, choosing a thematic reading focus for the course often privileges one of those groups against another because the one group simply doesn't have the background knowledge requisite for reading easily in that particular theme. But writing about writing tends to be difficult across the board, and because it is difficult across the board, it makes it easier for all students to see themselves in the same position. And then finally, I think an important rationale is that the writing about writing approach provides students with a very rich vocabulary for talking about writing, for describing their own writing and their language, and reflecting on it. This particular benefit supports what Deborah Myhill has said, along with many of her colleagues, that the idea that learners can think metalinguistically about writing and enact the thinking about writing in the composing of text. This becomes enabled and supported through what she calls high-quality classroom talk. Writing about writing provides an environment where such talk can occur. There are 3 components to the structure of a writing about writing course. The first is, rather than focusing on specific skills, in my writing about writing courses, I have 8 framing ideas. These ideas are written on almost all of the handouts. The students see them again and again, and they focus the work of the course. The aim of having these big ideas or threshold concepts frame the course is to give students not merely skills that may not transfer easily from one writing situation to the next, but principles about writing that can transfer easily. The work of Kathleen Yancey and her colleagues in transfer theory supports this notion and this component of a writing about writing syllabus. Another component of the writing about writing course is the anchor texts, the things that the students read. I have learned over the past several years of using a writing about writing syllabus in my courses that it's better to choose a smaller number, 4, 5, or 6 primary texts, rather than assigning too many, because we can return to them again and again. This on the screen now is just a sample of some of the texts that I have used as anchor text in my writing about writing courses. And my students have thoroughly enjoyed working with, for example, Peter Elbow's Reflections on Academic Discourse, as well as Toby Fulweiler's Looking for and Listening for My Voice. Ken Hyland's article on disciplinary voices has been incredibly important for my students as they develop an understanding of stance and engagement in academic writing. The third component of the writing about writing course, in addition to the big ideas, the threshold concepts that is, and in addition to the assigned readings, which we have to support carefully and revisit often, are the assignments. Right now in my writing about writing courses, I use 3 major pieces, which are composed over many weeks and then ultimately placed into a portfolio, along with a couple of other items that the students may choose, including a multimodal rendering of one of these pieces. The students also complete reflection memos for each of the assignments in the portfolio, and they ultimately compose their own theory of writing at the end of the course, bringing together many of the ideas we have encountered in the readings. All of these assignments are writing focused, from the literacy narrative, which is personal, to the profile of a discourse community and its communicative and literacy practices. This is a research paper which the students, in which the students explore and investigate a discourse community and its writing habits. perhaps a discourse community to which they would like to belong. And then ultimately they analyze an argument about writing, currently from the text, Bad Ideas About Writing. Ultimately, when I talk about writing in my first year writing courses, particularly those with multilingual writers, people ask me if they're successful. If you want to know whether or not we are able to eliminate all writing issues and grammar errors, the answer is absolutely not. But we do see signs of success. I would point out just a couple in these examples from student writing. For example, here is a student who said that she learned that writing blocks and struggling with writing certain things is natural for all writers. She goes on to say, I think that was my greatest growth this year, getting past the fact that everyone makes mistakes and goes through writer's block and begins to struggle with writing the material at hand. As long as you keep going and look to others for help, you'll be all right. Similarly, this student learned that writing has to connect to a reader. I was amazed by the statement from this writer. I feel like I didn't understand the way I write needs to matter to the reader and not just myself. That's a lesson this writer can carry into future courses. Let me give you two specific examples from multilingual writers. The first is from an Arabic speaker. She says, one of my favorite essays, along with G's, was Looking and Listening for My Voice by Toby Fulweiler. I followed his states that a writer must write her real authentic voice in writing and revising the writings to make sure the reader is going to be conscious about the writer's own presence in her writing. I tested out with my husband as I made him read an essay I wrote and asked him if he hears my voice and identity while reading it. The first thing he said it is nice, and asked who wrote it. I remembered that I never wrote in English. Maybe that is why my husband did not recognize my voice through my writings. Along with Fulweiler's advice, I followed Anne Lamott's advice of how writing does not happen from the first attempt, and a good writer goes through a lot of crummy drafts at first until he or she reaches the best idea and circle it to start from that point. This student began the semester not even writing with periods in sentences, just one long stream of consciousness. She had not had much formal schooling, but she gained a number of ideas about voice and applied them in her writing. Similarly, this student from China began the course with a lot of uncertainty, but she was able to apply a course concept, discourse, by quoting James G. And then here you will see she applied this to her own study of nursing. And then it used this to say, to acquire a secondary discourse, RNs need to follow experienced RNs to practice. Here she is paraphrasing, quoting, essential academic skills. So in conclusion, the primary goal of freshman composition is to improve all student writers, both the text that the students produce and the processes and knowledge that students use to produce their text. A writing studies approach is highly successful with this goal because it goes beyond teaching writing processes and deeply engages students with the issues and concepts of writing, significantly expanding their understanding of writing and themselves as writers. That's exactly what I have seen in my experiences with writing about writers. It is a writing about writing. It's an approach that scaffolds not texts, but writers, and then gives them the confidence to move forward in their academic writing careers.
Hello everyone, my name is Heather Finn and I'm an associate professor and deputy chair of ESL in the Department of Academic Literacy and Linguistics at Borough Manhattan Community College, which is part of the CUNY system. And the title of my presentation is Combining Developmental Writing and First Year Composition Classes, Faculty Perspectives on How Co-Requisite Teaching Affects Curriculum and Pedagogy. So just to give some background, approximately 2/3 of incoming community college students are deemed academically underprepared for college and are referred to developmental education courses. I want to say that ESL is included in developmental education. I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. And research has shown that developmental education has null or negative effects on students' college credit accumulation, persistence, and degree attainment. The result of this for the past, I would say 13, 14 years now, has been this shift to kind of reimagine developmental education and really think about how to help students acquire credits while fulfilling developmental requirements. Again, in this case, ESL as well. And one of the first models was the accelerated learning programs, which was developed mainly by Peter Adams at the Community College of Baltimore in 2007. And the idea with these accelerated models of instruction was that it was a paired course. So either two sequential developmental courses that would be combined into one single semester, or a compressed sequence, meaning the number of credit hours in developmental courses were compressed together, or this idea of a co-requisite course, which is that a student who places into developmental English, for example, could also take a college level course combined with the developmental course and receive college level credit for it. So for the purposes of today in this presentation, I'm going to focus on co-requisite courses which have been implemented at the college that I will be discussing. So this idea of acceleration, right? Again, moving students through their coursework more quickly, particularly in the case of developmental education. There has been a lot of research related to math and some related to English. Most of the research has focused on the effects of acceleration and its outcomes on completion rates. And again, showing that these accelerated programs do improve completion rates for students at the community college level. Few qualitative studies, though, really have been looking at instructional challenges or how acceleration influences pedagogy, particularly in the context of teaching English. And on top of that, teaching English to native English speakers versus students who are English learners, there really has been even less of a focus on students who fit into that category. So for this particular study that I'm going to present today, there's two research questions that we focused on, my colleague Sharon Avni and I. And the first one was, how do faculty members develop their curriculum and pedagogy to meet students' reading and writing needs in co-requisite writing classes? We were really interested in understanding how curriculum and teaching are adapted within this co-requisite model and how it affects reading and writing development for the students. Also, we were interested specifically in the aspects of reading and writing pedagogy that faculty found most effective and challenging as they helped their students to develop as college readers and writers. So the context for the study, it's a large urban community college in the New York area. There's approximately 25,000 students. The study was conducted in 2015, 2016, so pre-COVID. At that time, in that academic year, approximately 40% of incoming freshmen required remediation in writing. So in kind of response to this large number of students who required remediation, there was the development of a new course, and we'll call it English 100. And this was a combination of the highest level of developmental writing, which was typically 6 hours and 0 credits, with the credit-bearing required English composition course, which was the next level, which was 3 hours and 3 credits, into one 6-hour course. So in other words, again, it's that combined, the combination of requirements, and students could fulfill their developmental requirement in English while also receiving credit for English composition. So in the first semester it was offered, there were 208 students who enrolled in fall 2015, and spring 2016, it was growing. You know, the college was very interested in scaling up the program. So my colleague Sharon Avni and I came in to look at this course in spring 2016. Our backgrounds are in applied linguistics and TESOL, and we suspected that this type of model of instruction would soon be used would be applied to classes with English language learners, and we were very interested in faculty perspectives about these courses. So we conducted semi-structured interviews with 11 instructors in the English department. We'll call the college City Community College, who are currently teaching or who had previously taught English 100 in fall 2015. And our questions focused on curriculum and pedagogy in this newly developed course. This is just a list, hopefully you can see it a little bit, of the faculty that we interviewed. As you can see, the majority of instructors have a PhD and not only had been teaching full-time at the college, but had actually been teaching for, more than 10 years. Some were newer instructors as well. So just to talk a bit about the findings here, what we found after our interviews throughout the semester. Faculty really talked about this idea of reconceptualizing or recalibrating their reading and writing instruction in this co-requisite class. A big factor that came up was this question of time. So although in a co-requisite model where you have combined developmental English with English composition, and you have more time to cover the material, there still needed to be some more time to really get through everything in a meaningful way. Faculty felt they had to really slow their pace down in order to address students' issues or questions related to reading and comprehension, rather than just focusing on analysis, jumping right to that. And regarding the students in this class, these were students who were labeled as native English speakers. And when I say labeled, I mean based on an incoming test, based on information they provided as well. But this is a very multilingual college. So many spoke an additional language, and faculty reported that oftentimes they struggled with grammar and syntax. And this was one of the areas that faculty really felt they needed to focus on in class. I just included a quote here which says, with students who write correct sentences, you could explain to them in a really short amount of time how to structure an essay and how to develop ideas. But grammar and syntax take time. So this idea that although, the college was trying to speed up the process of students moving through the developmental courses, that multilingual students in particular often needed more time to focus on certain aspects of grammar and syntax, at least reported by the instructors, and the class didn't always allow for that additional time. Another finding was reconceptualizing goals and assessment in the course. So faculty really struggled with questions of evaluation and determining preparedness and readiness for the next level. So this course really, it's a combined gateway course in that if students pass, then again, they have also passed English 101 and they're moving on to, in other words, freshman composition to the next level. And as Susan reported, she said, what I've found that has been one of the hardest things about English 100, this co-requisite course, is that there's no time for confidence building. And just to take a step back, she said that in a typical developmental English class, there's a lot of time not just working through reading and writing material, but also helping students to build their confidence as readers and writers. And because that piece was eliminated and there's more of a focus on the English composition or English 101 work, then, that was problematic in her mind. So as she says, then to be evaluating them in the same way that I was evaluating my 101 students, I felt like had the opposite effect of destroying their confidence. So in Susan's mind, assessment was problematic because, again, she had to evaluate students who maybe she didn't feel were completely ready to be evaluated like her 101 students. And so she really had to rethink the way she was assessing students as well. So I know this is a quick snapshot really of the research, but the implications with this in terms of the effects on teachers with the move to more accelerated models of instruction and co-requisite models in particular, is really, first of all, adjusting readings and the rate in which material is covered. A lot of faculty talked about sort of adjusting the readings that they were giving, maybe not starting out with such complex readings at the start of the semester, and also covering the material at a slower pace because they had the 6 hours, but also still feeling like there was not enough time. And the second implication, the second piece, is this necessity that faculty expressed to focus on the nuts and bolts of writing. So for example, grammar, spelling, sentence structure. Faculty felt that yes, there was more time, but students also really needed more of a focus on these areas of writing. And they didn't always feel like they had the time for that. And the result is that it really broadens the definition of what it means to teach first-year composition. You know, there's really kind of a ripple effect because of, as faculty explained to us, because of what was happening in the 101 level, again, in this combined course, then instructors at the next level, in 201, for example, are meeting their students maybe in a different place than they would have been in if their standalone developmental courses had still been in place. And so I just want to shift to talk about English learners, since that's, you know, a focus of this session. And while our study didn't focus explicitly on English learners, I have done, my colleague Sharon Avni and I have been doing more research on what co-requisites look like with English learners. Because as I mentioned, we knew that this was where things were headed at the community college level. The co-requisite model has definitely expanded nationwide, and it includes now combined ESL and English composition classes. So although ESL is often separate from developmental, in this case, it has become absorbed into this movement to accelerate learning and movement through community college. Our preliminary research shows similar concerns cited by ESL faculty with regards to the recalibration of class material and questions of time, you know, not enough time to really get through material in a meaningful way, readiness, and also assessment. And particularly when it comes to readiness, questions of language learning takes time. And so to accelerate that process through the co-requisite model, many instructors have expressed concern about the pace at which students are expected to get through a certain level of academic essays when they might need more English language support. And again, this relates, but as co-requisites do replace many standalone ESL courses, which is happening with reading and writing courses throughout community colleges nationwide, questions about language and literacy development within this quicker time frame do need to be explored further to really understand how best to meet the needs of ESL students who are enrolling in writing courses at community college. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out.